The Tale of the Stupid Doctor. In a small village called Willowbrook, nestled between green hills and a sparkling river, there lived a doctor named Dr. Humphrey Scatterbrain. Despite his lofty title and white coat, Dr. Scatterbrain was infamous for his utter lack of common sense. The villagers often whispered about his bizarre methods, but because he was the only doctor in town, they had no choice but to consult him when unwell. The first incident. One day, old Mr. Jenkins visited Dr. Scatterbrain with a severe toothache. He groaned in pain, clutching his jaw. "Ah, I see the problem," exclaimed the doctor, pointing at Jenkins' right foot. "My foot?" Jenkins asked, confused. "Yes, your right foot is too cold, which is causing your toothache," declared Dr. Scatterbrain. Without waiting for approval, he wrapped Jenkins' foot in a steaming hot towel and sent him home. To everyone's surprise, Jenkins returned the next day and announced his toothache had vanished. What Jenkins didn't reveal was that he had also stopped eating the rock-hard candies his wife made, which were the actual cause of his problem. The frog treatment. Word of Dr. Scatterbrain's genius spread. A few weeks later, Sally the baker came running to the clinic. She was covered in itchy red rashes. "Doctor, I'm miserable. What should I do?" she pleaded. Dr. Scatterbrain stroked his chin thoughtfully and rummaged through a drawer until he found a jar filled with frogs. "Aha! Frog therapy will cure you," he declared. Before Sally could protest, he placed a frog on her head and instructed her to sit still for an hour. Sally reluctantly complied, and after an hour of fidgeting, the doctor removed the frog and said, "You're cured." While Sally's rashes eventually faded on their own, the villagers were amazed at the doctor's seemingly miraculous methods. The wrong prescription. One day, a visiting merchant named Thomas arrived in Willowbrook. He had heard of Dr. Scatterbrain's peculiar fame and decided to see him for a headache that had been troubling him for weeks. "Ah, headaches," said the doctor. "They are caused by excessive thinking. Have you been reading books lately?" Thomas nodded. "Then stop reading for a week. And take this prescription," said the doctor, handing him a piece of paper that read, "Drink only pickle juice and sleep upside down." Though skeptical, Thomas followed the advice. A week later, his headache was gone, but only because he had accidentally hit his head on a low doorway, and the pain made him forget his old headache entirely. The great mishap. Despite his odd methods, the villagers kept visiting Dr. Scatterbrain. However, his luck ran out when Mrs. Hilda, the mayor's wife, came to him with a mysterious illness. She had chills, a fever, and severe dizziness. "This is serious," said Dr. Scatterbrain. "You have caught the rare and dangerous ailment known as invisible goose fever." "Invisible what?" Hilda asked weakly. "The only cure is to wear a goose costume for a week," the doctor insisted, handing her a ridiculous outfit with feathers and a beak. Mrs. Hilda, too sick to argue, wore the costume. When her husband saw her waddling around the village, he was furious. The mayor called a meeting to discuss Dr. Scatterbrain's methods. The village revolt. At the meeting, everyone shared their stories of Dr. Scatterbrain's absurd treatments. "The frogs were unnecessary," cried Sally. "I didn't need to drink pickle juice," shouted Thomas. "And I certainly don't need to look like a goose," declared Mrs. Hilda. Finally, the villagers decided to confront the doctor. They marched to his clinic, demanding an explanation. Dr. Scatterbrain, oblivious to their anger, smiled and said, "But all of you got better, didn't you?" The villagers paused. Strangely, he was right. Despite his nonsensical methods, they had all recovered. Whether it was luck, coincidence, or the power of belief, no one could say for sure. A new beginning. Although the villagers were fed up with his antics, they realized they had no alternative. They decided to help him improve instead of driving him away. They sent Dr. Scatterbrain to a neighboring town to train under a more experienced physician. Months later, he returned, a changed man. While he still had a knack for unusual ideas, his methods were now grounded in proper medical knowledge. The villagers, though cautious, welcomed him back, and Dr. Scatterbrain slowly earned their trust again. From then on, Willowbrook was known as the village with the quirkiest, yet oddly effective, doctor around. Dr. Scatterbrain's name became a legend, and his story a reminder that sometimes, even the strangest paths can lead to healing.